amici, and welcome back to Experience Italy with Friends. We're excited to kick off Season 3 with a destination that almost everyone dreams about, but also one that sparks a lot of questions: the city of Venice. It's a city built on water, filled with history, elegance, and mystery, and it's also one of the most visited places in the world. So is it worth it? And if you go, how do you experience the best of it? We recently returned from a winter weekend in Venice during the early days of Carnevale, and it felt like the perfect time to share a fresh perspective. In today's episode, we're talking about the magic of Venice, how to decide if it fits your itinerary, where to stay, what to do, and how to experience it in a more meaningful way. Let's get started. Andiamo! Experience Italy with Friends is a travel and lifestyle podcast where we will explore our favorite destinations and hidden gems, share key travel tips and cultural insights, and provide real-time updates about our move to this remarkable country. Join me, Tanya Razzo, an Italian travel expert and founder of Amici Vacations, and my Italian husband and producer, Davide Razzo, on a journey that is sure to inspire you and prepare you to create immersive and authentic experiences of your own in the beautiful country of Italy. Hello, everyone. We're so happy to be back, and thanks so much for joining us for another fun season. I'm your host, Tanya, and my husband and co-host, Davide, is here with me as always. We're really excited to be kicking off Season 3 after an extended holiday break.
Ciao a tutti, bentornati. We are back. It felt so good, though, to slow down and spend time with family, reset a little bit. But now we're back in Italy, back behind those microphones and ready to embark on the new year ahead.
Yay!
So, Tanya, why did you choose Venice to kick off the season?
Well, we don't really plan our episodes too far in advance. Like, the topics just sort of reveal themselves based on what we've been doing or working on. And I've really been busy throughout January kicking off trip planning for the year. And, I started to notice a pattern. Like, it felt like every other client conversation included Venice. I was constantly describing the city, helping people decide whether to include it, how long to stay, what's it really like. And I thought, okay, this is a sign. I think I know what we need to talk about.
Yeah, you were telling me about it. And then we also realized it was Carnevale season. And we were like, hey, should we go? We've never been to Carnevale. So you quickly put a plan together and off we were on a train to Venice.
Yeah, I really wanted to see it for ourselves, and it just felt like the perfect destination to kick off the new season. One of the most iconic cities in the world, and one that so many travelers are trying to figure out.
But as usual, Tanya, let's start with a quick live update from Montepulciano. We actually have a lot to talk about. I mean, it's been only almost 2 months.
Just 2 months.
I know.
Well, we actually returned to Minneapolis for about 3 weeks over the holidays, and it was so nice to reconnect with family and friends and enjoy our traditions together. And, one thing we've learned about being empty nesters is that it's not always easy to get everyone in the same room at the same time. So when it happens, we really cherish it.
Yeah, I mean, it was also an emotional visit. We were there when the tragic shooting happened involving Renee Good. And, Minnesota has continued to be in the news, all for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it's been heartbreaking to watch from afar. And even though we live in Italy now, Minnesota will always be part of who we are. It's home. It's part of our DNA. And to our listeners back there, we're thinking of you. We've been proud to see how communities have come together to support one another. And we've even had Italian friends and colleagues reach out to check in and send their support. So just know that you're being seen.
Yeah, it has been incredible. And I'm so proud of them. And I wish we were there with them. But, it also reminded us that even when you move abroad, you never lose your connection to the place that shaped you,
No, it's so true. Minnesota will always be home in many ways. And even though, just to transition back here to Montepulciano, we have a new home here that we have found. And, we have some exciting news on that front that after a long search, lots of viewings, and more than a few twists and turns, we're scheduled to finally close on our apartment at the end of February.
See, we've already started working with an architect and kitchen and bathroom designers. We had contractors over already, and we booked them to start renovations soon. So it's kind of start to be, to feel real.
And fun, finally. Looking back, I have to say the biggest lesson we're taking away from this journey is that what you think you want when you first dream about moving to Italy might change once you're actually living here. Our priorities definitely evolved over time. We came here with visions of a cute villa on top of a rolling hill surrounded by cypress trees, but came to quickly realize that, that may be the perfect place for a vacation home, but likely not ideal for everyday life.
Especially when we, sold our home in Medina in Minnesota and rented this house in Wysada. We kind of got accustomed to this walk everywhere lifestyle. And this is something we were looking for, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't think it was, about finding the right property, but it was to find the right lifestyle for here as well in Montepulciano. And I think we finally found it with this apartment in the Centro Storico. So
yeah, I agree, and I certainly hope so. I'm excited. I can see our lives taking hold there and finally being able to put down some roots and enjoy and feel more a part of the city. I mean, we have been this past year, but I just feel having our own place and changing it will really be ours. So,
and hopefully moving for the last time.
I hope so too. So, more updates coming soon on this topic, as I'm sure the next renovation phase will be super entertaining. I mean, renovation in Italy, I think, says it all.
Yes.
So, but now let's head north to one of the most magical places in Italy. I'm really glad we made a quick trip back. It was a good reset on what Venice actually feels like.
Me too. Okay, Tanya, so give us the geography. Where exactly is Venice?
All right. Well, Venice is in the Veneto region. Surprise, surprise. In the northeast of Italy. It sits in the Venetian lagoon, just off the mainland city of Mestre and near the Venice airport. If you look at it on a map, many people say the historic center looks a bit like a fish, with the Grand Canal forming that big S shape through the middle.
And I should point out, Venice isn't just one island. It's actually more than 100 small islands connected by over 400 bridges with around 170 canals between them.
Wow.
There are no roads and no cars, just walking and boats.
Yes, and what fascinates me is that it's basically man-made. I mean, Davide, you're the history buff between the two of us, so how did this whole thing come about?
Well, Venice was founded in the 5th century, when people from the mainland were escaping the Germanic invasions. So they moved out into the lagoon because it was easier to defend. Yeah, having water in between, right? Over time, they built homes and churches on thousands, actually, millions of wooden piles or pylons driven deep into the mud. And of course, they didn't have machines like today to drive those pylons in. It was done all by hand, so I was told. I don't know. I mean, the Egyptians, they had some sort of machinery or something, but yeah. Anyway, it's fascinating no matter what. But what's impressive is that whole city still rests on that today.
And that totally amazes me. I watched a documentary about it once a few years back, and the engineering alone is incredible. I mean, as you were saying, all those pylons, and I think they're like 40 feet long, like these huge basically logs that they vertically drilled into the ground. And, it's the entire city now just rising out of the water and still standing after more than 1,000 years.
Well, not just standing, it's thriving. For centuries, Venice was a major trading power and one of the richest and most important cities in Europe. it had a huge navy and trading network across all the Mediterranean.
And you still see that wealth today. The palaces, the grand churches, the details everywhere. And, visually it's different from other Italian cities, though. Some of the domes, the arches, they feel almost Eastern.
Yeah, well, that's because Venice traded for centuries with Constantinople and the Ottoman Empire. So you get this mix of Italian, Byzantine, and Islamic influence in the architecture.
Well, that explains why Venice has that slightly exotic feel compared to cities like Florence or Rome then.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I'm going to keep going. Later, it fell under Austrian control and then joined unified Italy in 1866. And once the bridges connected Venice to the mainland, tourism really exploded.
Yes, I would say it really, really exploded. And today it's one of the most visited cities in the world.
Actually, before we move on, I want to share a little Venetian fun fact.
Okay.
So even the word ciao, we
Like
all
ciao.
know ciao, ciao. That actually comes from the Venetian dialect. Did you know that?
No, really, I didn't know.
Okay, so it comes actually from the word sciavo, which is the dialect word of schiavo, and which means servant. So in the very old days, when they were greeting to each other or they were finishing, like driving the boat to for the noble people, they would just say "at your service,"
Mm-hmm.
and in Italian, in that dialect, it would be "su sciavo." Okay, so and then they actually started to abbreviate and swallow some of the consonant, and it just remained sciavo, ciao. So it remained that. And now, ciao, it's used all over the world.
That's interesting and so funny because now it feels so casual, like just a quick hi or bye.
True, but it actually started as a very formal, respectful greeting there in Venice. So,
Okay, well, hey, thanks for that fun fact.
all right, well, okay, we'll continue on. We just said that Venice is one of the most visited cities in the world. So when your clients, Tanya, ask whether they should include Venice in their itinerary or not, what do you tell them?
Well, I'll be honest. There are a lot of opinions out there about Venice, but personally, I've always loved it. Like, there's just no other place like it in the world. And I know I said that about Rome too, but for completely different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, Rome is big and ancient, dramatic. Venice is something else.
It totally is. Like, I completely agree. And, Venice feels almost unreal. The fact that it's a whole city built on water is just incredible. And you feel it the second you step out of the train station and you see the Grand Canal, boats instead of cars, bridges instead of streets. It's one of those moments where you just stop and think, wow, this place actually exists. And it just feels like an anomaly. Like, how is there's so much water and buildings and I don't know, it blows your mind.
Yeah. Well, and again, the architecture. I mean, it's very unique and elegant,
Yes, it has this like mix of Parisian sophistication. Then there's that exotic Eastern influence we just talked about. And then on top of that layered in is beautiful Italian Baroque architecture. And, we were walking around and I was pointing out the little like statues of angels in the corners of facades. And it just feels theatrical and romantic and almost like a stage set.
Mm.
And, that's also where the traditions like Carnevale come from.
Okay.
The masks, the costumes, the mystery, it all fits the personality of the city. Venice has always had this dramatic, slightly secretive character, and Carnevale is just a big expression of that.
But we also hear, or as we've seen it, a lot about the crowds.
Yeah, and that's the part we have to talk about honestly, because Venice is one of the most visited cities in the world, as we said. So over-tourism has become a real issue, and it's in many cities across the country, unfortunately. And, the local population has dropped a lot over the decades, and many residents have moved to the mainland because it's expensive and tourism changes daily life.
But okay, but it's not empty. I mean, people still live there.
No, it's not empty at all. And we saw that. Like right? Like kids were playing in the Campetti, locals going about their day, real neighborhoods once you're away from like the main areas. And when you think about it, Venice still has around 50,000 residents. That's more than 3 times the population of Montepulciano, where we live.
Well, okay. So it's not really an open air museum. How I described it once I got there, it's actually still a real living city.
Very much so. And, as we were going around with our guide, she was pointing out the schools and like the city pool and the universities and life. And it is a real city, and the city is trying to manage the crowds better now. Like they're charging that visitor fee on certain weekends of the year. They're limiting cruise ship access and taking other measures. So my answer to clients is usually this. Venice is absolutely worth seeing at least once. It's iconic for a reason, but you have to go with the right expectations.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Well, it's going to be busy. That's just the reality. But with the right planning, you can still have a really beautiful, meaningful experience. And, that's really where I come in. Each time we visit, I learn more about what works and what doesn't. And I use that to help my clients experience the best side of Venice.
Okay. So let's say someone decides Venice is worth visiting, right? They want to go.
Yep.
The next big question is usually, where should I stay?
You're exactly right. And a question, kind of a pre-question to that is, should we stay on the mainland? Should we stay in Mestre or Treviso and just day trip into Venice? Maybe it's easier, it's less crowded, it might be cheaper.
Yeah. I can appreciate that thought, right? Because it's easy enough. But how do you respond? Because what's the deal, right?
I do. And honestly, for a first visit, I usually discourage it because, Venice is one of those places that completely changes depending on the time of day. Early in the morning and in the evening, after the day trippers leave, or before the cruises dump people off. Like this, this is when the city feels calmer, more romantic and much more authentic.
Yeah, we walked to the Piazza San Marco or to the Arsenale that night. And one of the nights we were there, and it was completely different than during the day. But so it's every kind of touristy town, like even like Capri. Capri at night is more calmer and everything. It's a complete different vibe for sure, right, Tanya?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. And if you stay outside the city, you're not benefiting from that. You're only seeing Venice at its busiest when the trains are full because the workers and the tourists are coming in on the train. The main streets are crowded and everyone's rushing through the big sites. So if it's your first time, I really think it's worth staying in Venice itself, even if it costs a little more. You get to experience the quieter, more magical side of the city.
Okay, so let's say we are staying in Venice. How do you choose where?
Well, this is where Venice is very different from cities like Rome or Florence. First, again, there's no cars, lots of bridges, and getting around with luggage can be tricky. And we saw this, right? We first had to lug our suitcase, and it always reminds me, pack light. You do not want to be lugging a huge suitcase around. No. But there are water taxis. They make things convenient, but they're expensive. And even short walks can involve stairs and narrow alleys.
And there's no Ubers either.
No.
Anyway, so yeah, it's basically a maze of canals and bridges.
Yeah.
So you can get kind of lost too, maybe.
Yeah, but and so in Venice, where you stay really shapes how your whole trip feels. Let's help visualize this a bit. According to Google Maps, most areas of Venice can be reached, by foot in 25, 40 minutes.
Yeah, but that's not factoring in like crowd bottlenecks over bridges or single file alleys. So some of the alleys they're very narrow. So you have to make room. And if you have a suitcase, that's that's what it's causing the bottlenecks. It can take longer than the estimated 25 to 40 minutes, emotionally you feel it feels much longer. And
yeah, even just last weekend, you were starting to lose it. You're not good in crowds, and
no.
Yeah, so I usually break it down and explain this to clients is like two main approaches. So approach number one, aim on an easier arrival, easier departure, quieter vibe. And to achieve that, you need to stay in Cannaregio, Santa Croce, parts of Dossoduro. And, these areas are closer to the train station or a major vaporetto, which is the water bus. So if you're by those stops, it makes things a little easier. The areas are more residential, they're calmer at night, and generally easier to reach with luggage.
Yeah, so those areas are on the north side of the island, and there are more local neighborhoods, right? So there's less chaos.
Yeah, you got it. But the trade-off is that you'll be farther from places like Rialto and San Marco, the main attraction areas. So you may do more walking during the day, but it'll be easier to get there on your arrival day and easier to depart when you leave.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so what's the second option?
Well, the second approach is to kind of stay where it's happening, the central and iconic areas, and that's staying near the Piazza San Marco, the Rialto Bridge, or the San Polo neighborhood. And it puts you right in the heart of the action. And, this makes it very convenient for sightseeing. And then it's easy to pop back to your hotel room during the day if you want to break from the crowds and wait for the cruise people to leave. But those areas are busier. They're going to be more expensive and sometimes trickier to reach when you first arrive with luggage.
Okay, so if somebody wants in between,
Yeah, like I said, the perfect kind of sweet spot, I guess, would then be around the Rialto Bridge, especially for first-timers, that it's central and lively, but still pretty workable for getting in and out relatively easy. So kind of a good compromise.
Okay. But then comes the other question that everybody asks.
Yes, everyone for next asks, but is there a canal view? And do I need to stay on the Grand Canal? And the thing is, because there are 170 canals across the islands, you can get a canal view almost anywhere. So you don't have to focus just on the Grand Canal, though it's usually the one highlighted on TikTok. It's gorgeous, but you'll pay for it to get those TikTok videos. And, the other big trade-off is people want quiet and local. Like I hear a lot of times, I just want to feel like a local, that I live there. But I also want, to be steps from restaurants and nightlife. And it's really hard to deliver both. Like you have to kind of go one way or the other. And, that's fine. It's just about choosing what matters most for your trip. Do you want to be a local or do you want to be where the action is?
Yeah, it can change the vibe of your trip totally. I hope that if you travel alone, then you know what you want. But if you travel with other couples or other people, that could be really tricky then, So where you stay really changes how the whole trip feels. But there's no single right answer.
No, there's not. And, once you've picked the best space for you, the fun part begins, figuring out what to see and how to experience the city from where you're based out of.
So let's talk about that, Tanya. What should people actually do once they're there?
Well, the first thing I usually recommend, and I think I said the same thing about Rome, is that it's really important to get a guided overview experience. There's so much to see, and Venice can feel like a maze at first, as we talked about. So having somebody introduce you to the layout, the history, and a few hidden corners really helps.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, you just wander around and don't feel appreciate what you're looking at. A local always provides some great insights and tips for the rest of your stay, right?
Yeah, and it's fun to meet somebody. And, this overview could be a walking tour, a highlights tour, or even a food tour, which I always say is sightseeing with a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And, another simple way to get oriented, and you don't have to have a guide per se. Actually, there's a great Rick Steves audio about going along the Grand Canal in Vaporetto. But it is to hop on a Vaporetto and, ride the full length of the Grand Canal. And it's like a slow-moving, floating city tour. And it also helps you get comfortable using these water buses.
Yeah, we did that. It's basically Venice's public transportation. It's easy to use. You just tap your credit card to get a ticket. And, it's actually really scenic. Once you've done it once, you feel more confident using the rest of your stay.
No, completely agree. And it'll be helpful as maybe you picked a location a little bit further away from the sites. This helps you feel confident to jump on a water bus and get you there. And, as you start touring around and looking for the key attractions, the first place and the most, iconic is the Piazza San Marco. It's the heart of Venice and one of the most famous squares in the world, actually. And what I love doing is just grabbing a table at one of the historic cafes, ordering a drink, and just soaking in the atmosphere. It's a bit pricey, I have to say, but it's worth this old world experience. I mean, visualize, think about waiters in tuxedos, live classical music, and that grand, elegant setting.
And the buildings around the square are incredible.
They're gorgeous. And, especially St. Mark's Basilica, it's one of the most unique churches in Italy. And honestly, one of my personal favorites. It has these 3 large domes. Inside, there's gold mosaics everywhere, a ton of Eastern influence, and it doesn't look like anything else I've seen in this country. And I usually recommend a guided visit, ideally with terrace access. It helps you understand what you're seeing, skip some of the lines, and you get those beautiful views over the square. And another tip that those evening tours can feel even more special and less crowded because only certain operators get to go inside.
Oh, cool. And Tanya, right next door is the Doge's Palace, the home of the Doge or the ruler of Venice.
Yep. And the Doge's Palace is also stunning and its history is fascinating. I mean, I just think it's best to see it, though, with a good guide. Or, I think it's for people who really enjoy history and art. And if you've ever been to Versailles in France or the Pitti Palace in Florence, it's similar in grandeur. It's very ornate, a lot of ballrooms and big rooms with murals and art. And so if you're not an art lover, sometimes, it gets a little bit long. But, that said, the exterior alone is breathtaking. It's pink and white marble. It's a beautiful example of Venetian Gothic architecture. And right next to it, don't miss the Bridge of Sighs, this ornate bridge that, prisoners would cross on their way to their prison cells. So it's one of those classic Venice moments.
Yeah.
Though one thing I need to highlight is you can't hang out by the Bridge of Sighs too long because as we were crossing the bridge, we noticed there's policemen guarding it saying, come on, move along. And, I overheard somebody say, well, it's to keep things moving, but also I think it's a prime pickpocket spot. The crowds there are easy to make it a target. So they kind of say, keep it moving. So quickly get your picture and move on or do a tour.
I mean, like in every city, right? Like Florence and Rome, you always have to be on the lookout for those pickpocketers and especially where there's crowds, right, Tanya?
Yep. So after these, the main attractions around Piazza San Marco, next is looking for a view. And one thing you'll notice if you've listened to our other episodes is I love a good view.
Oh, yeah. Always chasing the view.
Yep. So, going up the Campanile, the bell tower in Piazza San Marco is a must for me. And it's an easy elevator ride. No steps for once. We've talked about many of the different towers around Italy, only 300, 400 steps. This one is actually a large elevator, so it goes quite quickly. The line moves. And the view over the lagoon and rooftops is incredible, especially at sunset.
Sunset in Venice is something special, right, Tanya?
It is. And I'm always a sucker for sunsets, no matter where we are. But in Venice, it's something particularly special because the light reflects off the water, the buildings turn golden, and the whole city just feels softer and more romantic. And, one of my favorite experiences is simply just walking along the waterfront in Dorsoduro or near San Giorgio at sunset and, no agenda, just stroll, take it in.
And of course, you have to get on the water. So maybe even, time it with a sunset to hit 2 goals at once.
Hey, I like that efficiency. So absolutely. And, the Vaporetto is great for getting around, just if you want to get a quick ride on the water and seeing the Grand Canal. But I do think a gondola ride is also a must in Venice, even if it sounds a little cliche. It's slower, it's quieter, and it's more intimate than a water taxi. You can, easily maneuver around the smaller canals that you wouldn't get to see otherwise. And a good gondoliere will share little stories along the way.
Yeah, I thought it would be a little too touristy, But it was actually really peaceful. You move slowly, so you can really take everything in. And instead, racing past buildings and with an engine in the back, not understanding what they're saying. And so I think that's actually a better way to kind of learn about the buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah, sometimes the gondoliers are pretty chatty and they'll point out things, and sometimes they play music, and it's very romantic.
Yeah.
It's fun. So it's one of those things that feels different once you're doing it. And, it's sort of like going to Paris. You got to go to the Eiffel Tower. When in Venice, you got to do a gondola experience. And, you don't have to board near the Bridge of Sighs. I think that's a very popular place to get on a gondola, and the lines are very long there. There are many other quieter stations in areas like Dossoduro, Cannaregio that can feel much more relaxed.
Yeah, the stops were everywhere there. So easy to get to it.
Yep.
Okay, Tanya, what about beyond the popular main attractions?
Well, I always encourage people to just wander the neighborhoods if there's time. There's Cannaregio, Dossoduro, even the quieter parts of Castello. Like you'll find all these little squares, and actually they're not squares, they're campi. They were named after fields. Campo means field.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to have grass areas. So you'll see these campi everywhere, and more ornate churches to be found, and grandiose palazzi, local bakeries, small wine bars. This is where the city starts to feel more real. And if you like museums, there are some great ones too in Venice, like the Peggy Guggenheim Collection for Modern Art, or the Gallery dell'Accademia for Venetian masters. And there's even a Leonardo da Vinci interactive museum that is fun for kids.
I was mentioning that Venice is not just one big island, but it's hundreds of islands. So there are other bigger islands. Do you recommend visiting those?
Yes, but only if you have more than a day or two in Venice. Then it's worth exploring the lagoon a little bit more. And the three most popular islands are Murano, Burano, and Torcello. And you can do an organized tour that will, take you from the main island over to these surrounding ones. But I prefer taking the ferry over. Like I've done both. And with the ferry, you sit higher on the water and can explore at your own pace. Like nobody's saying, hey, you got 1 hour, run around. And Murano is the closest one, and it's famous for glass making. So it's great if you're interested in that tradition, or if you want a meaningful souvenir, but note that it's breakable. And, my honest opinion, though, is that the island itself isn't dramatically different from the main city. And the glass blowing demos can feel a bit sales focused. Like you get a 10-minute demonstration, you ooh and ah, and then it's come see our gallery and buy a bunch of expensive Venetian glass. So I didn't love that part of it. And, but what I did love, and is the next island, was Burano. And that was my favorite. It's full of brightly colored houses and has a charming fishing village vibe. And it's very photogenic, very cheerful. And it's also known for its lace making. Now, it immediately reminded me of my grandma's doilies. But they do have beautiful like tablecloths and other lace, fashion. So great place for that. And then there's Torcello, which is a much quieter and more rural island. And, I haven't been there yet myself, but it's perfect if you want something peaceful and different.
I never was on one of those islands you just talked about, but I assume that it is a different, pace, change of pace of the crowds. But I also learned about the Lido. There's a Lido there, and the Lido is the largest of Venice's islands. It's a long, narrow strip of land that separates the lagoon with the Adriatic Sea. Almost like in Miami.
That strip of land.
Yeah. So there's about 8 miles of sandy beach on that. So it's a great place to take a break from the city, especially in summer.
Right. No one ever thinks about going to the beach in Venice, but it is possible. And again, it's maybe a way to get away from the crowds in the afternoon. Head to the beach.
Yeah, why not? Anyway, Tanya, so we've given everyone plenty of ideas for what to see and what to do in Venice, but we are there for a specific reason. Carnevale.
Yes. And in many ways, talking about Carnevale is similar to, how we talked about Palio in Siena, that it's so much a part of its identity, the masks, the costumes, the mystery. you really can't understand the spirit of the city of Venice without understanding a little bit about Carnevale. And, we had never experienced it before. We would usually travel in late spring or summer. So this was our first time, and I was so excited.
Yeah. Well, for our audience that doesn't know, Carnevale is actually a celebration right before Lent. The name itself comes from the Latin, which carne and vale, so 2 words, and basically means, farewell to meat, because you can eat up meat up to right before Lent. Yeah, Ash Wednesday.
So this was the last big celebration before they had to
It's like Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is the same thing. Mardi Gras is Fat Tuesday, right?
Right, so, eat meat and up until you have to fast.
Exactly. So historically, it was a time when social rules were relaxed. People wore masks. So no one knew who was rich or poor, noble or a common people. So everyone mixed together and it became this big theatrical celebration. So then the first official mention of Carnevale in Venice goes back to 1296, when the day before Lent was declared a public holiday. By the 1700s, it was famous all over Europe.
And then I learned it disappeared for a while and wasn't revived until the late 1970s, which is not so long ago, given that I know somebody born around.
Okay.
So, what you see today is a mix of historic tradition and modern events.
So the whole thing runs for about 2 weeks. And, there's different big events building up to the final weekend before Lent. There are concerts, parades, street performances, and the famous costume contests in Piazza San Marco. And a lot of the most glamorous events actually happen indoors, like the big masked balls and private dinners.
Yes, I read about them, and then we were chatting with our guide about it and trying to get some of the inside scoop on these events. And, she's lived there her whole life, and she said it was always her dream to attend one of these magnificent balls, at least once in her life. But she was explaining, that a single evening can cost 5,000 or 6,000 euro once you include the costume and the tickets. And so I think it was safer for us that we admired the idea from a distance.
Yeah, my jaw dropped. So, we were looking into it to rent costumes, and they were up to $1,000. And I go no way.
And it's not even buying it, it's just renting it.
Yeah, I know. You're renting it, but it's 800 euros. And then you need to do alterations to your fittings and all that. And it's just, no, it was too much. And so we left it. So, Tanya, what did you think of Carnevale? Was it what you expected?
Well, I think so, but maybe not so. Because, we decided to go earlier in these 2 weeks, right? Before the final weekend, we wanted to get a feel for the atmosphere without really being around the biggest crowds and the higher prices. And, honestly, it wasn't what I expected, because I think I was picturing it something more like Mardi Gras in New Orleans, where it's this big party fest. And even Fosnacht, where we had that in Basel, where you're from. And I had that experience 2 or 3 years, and it was loud and packed, and there's constant parades, and it's just kind of a more lively, noisy event. But Venice was very elegant and relaxed, and there were some small street performances and the different campi, but a lot of it was just people dressing up in these, magnificent, beautiful costumes and strolling around and posing for photos. That was their big thing. So I don't know. I feel like the kids today that are always posing for their TikTok photos would go crazy. That's all everyone does is strike a pose. But it was this mix of historical elegance, a bit of New Orleans style fun. So I think some of the more rowdy, colorful costumes. And then there was the elegance, like the Marie Antoinette, very ornate, wigs and, just the men and women partnered together, couples that look like they're from the 19 or 1500s, I should say. And then there were just a lot of kids in what looked like Halloween costumes, your standard superheroes, princesses, everything.
We saw also some of, I assume there were visitors, wearing tutus and, chaotic sort of costumes. And, but if I compare it to Fastnacht in Basel or the Mardi Gras, this is very relaxed. It's kind of like a show off of those costumes. The kids are having fun. You see the kids throwing the confettis, the
paper,
the paper confettis, but it was not chaotic at all.
No, it wasn't. And, there was a stage set up in Piazza San Marco, and there were some concerts happening in the afternoons and evenings, but it wasn't like overwhelmingly loud or crazy. It was much more subdued than I expected. So it's not that I didn't like it. I think it just was, you asked me, was it what I expected? And it wasn't, it just was different.
Yeah. Those concerts, I don't know if they were Carnevale related or actually coincided with the Olympic Games. And speaking of that, we went to the water show at the Arsenale, and wow, that was a total surprise. Thanks for organizing it, Tanya.
Yeah, I'm so happy I learned about this event and bought tickets in advance. Like, it was out of this world. And the theme was Echoes of Olympia, inspired by the mythic origins of the Olympic Games. So it made us feel like we were at our own little special opening ceremony for the Olympics, which, was also taking place that night. And we were like, we should be home watching this on TV.
That's how I felt. That was incredible. The show was spectacular. There were like floating stages. Then there was laser show, dancing fountains, and amazing music, performers flying over the water with those water jet packs. And
actually, I looked it up, Davide. I had to tell you, it's called a flyboard. They're on a board, and he's like surfing in the air, propelled by like that water, like the hose of water. But it was like he was dancing around like on a surfboard up in the sky, doing flips and stuff. Like,
there was one part he did it alone, and he kind of did it like a salto in it.
Yeah,
and that was, and then he danced with someone. Yeah, with a partner, and
they were doing like acrobatics in the air.
Yeah, and he did that again with her. So.
Yes, no, it was incredible. Like, honestly, if you've ever seen like the fountains at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas and thought they were impressive, like this whole water experience was on like a whole other level.
Put it times 10. So
yes.
Okay, but of course we had to participate in Carnevale, and you were able to convince me to wear a mask.
Yes. Can you guys believe it? Like, it took me some effort, but our guide took us to a real artisan mask shop. And, that was an experience in itself. It wasn't, wanting to shop and buy something at the tourist stands with all these masks coming from China. This was like a true workshop, and everything in it felt like a piece of art. And there was like so much variety.
Yeah. I was impressed. So we found a couple that we liked and could afford. They were kind of expensive, but we wore them to the small opera at night when we went there. And it was actually really fun to join in. And they had hundreds of masks in that store. Some were covering your whole face. Some had some hats on top of that or some feathers. And
there was one with a really, really long nose.
Yeah. And our tour guide explained to us it was built during the plague. That's one like that came up because they were stuffing like spices and cinnamon, like good smelling stuff in that because people were walking on the streets during the plague. There was the smell of dead people. So they kind of wanted to mask that. So
well, I'm glad that was not an issue.
Anyway, the masks we bought were only covering our eyes. And even though, let's be honest, the mask didn't really disguise us. No one knew us anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what we were trying to hide from. It's not that, either way, we were unknowns. But it made us feel part of the celebration. And, now we've got some beautiful souvenirs and maybe future Halloween costumes. And, I'll actually post a picture or two in our Experience Italy with Friends Facebook page. So you guys can see Davide in a mask.
All right. So overall, I'm glad we experienced it though.
Me too. I really enjoyed it, even though, again, it wasn't what I was expecting, but it was still beautiful. And maybe one day we'll go back for the final weekend when everything is in full swing, if I can convince you.
Okay. All right. Well, so who do you think you need to convince out of your clients? Who is Carnevale best for?
Well, I'd say it's perfect for travelers who just love culture, costumes, unique local traditions. If you like theatrical experiences, photography, special events, it's really fun. Sort of, I don't know, I guess it would be like going to Oktoberfest in Munich, right? Like it's a once in a lifetime kind of thing.
Yeah.
You kind of have to like want to be a part of that kind of chaos, or not even chaos, but crowds.
Yeah.
So if you prefer quiet sightseeing, you might want to come earlier in winter or later in spring instead.
And if you do want to go during Carnevale, right, just plan ahead.
Yeah, exactly. You got to book early, expect higher prices, and decide whether you want the big final weekend or the quieter days leading up to it like we did.
Okay, Tanya. We talked about where to stay and what to see, what to do. Now we get to my favorite topic.
I wonder what that is.
So what should people eat at Venice?
Well, rule number 1, eat like a Venetian. And that it made me just sound like walk like an Egyptian.
Eat like a Venetian.
I'm sorry, I cracked myself up. And that usually means cicchetti.
Yeah, Venice is all about cicchetti, which you can get at Tibaccari, which are little wine bars.
And I love cicchetti. I feel like I've mentioned them in other episodes, but honestly, I could just live on them. Like we had them several times over the weekend and I was very happy.
So for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about here, so, you heard about tapas that you get in Spain. So in Venice, you get Venetian tapas. Which,
well, they don't really like that you call it that, but it's something more the most relatable that you can come up to.
Now people can visualize a little bit. I mean, it's a little bread and on top of, or crostini, and then there's some fried bites
too.
Seafood.
Arancini kind of things.
Yeah. And then, or just little sandwiches. I mean, there's hundreds variety. You go there, you look at them, and you point what you want to eat.
Yeah, no, they're great. There's so much variety. And sometimes they come in little dishes. Sometimes they're polenta. Sometimes they're seafood based. And every, baccaro is known for like their own kind of take on it, and they have different specialties, and they are either €3, €4 a piece on average. Some go up to 6 if there's like the fancy seafood, but it's super casual, super local, and you don't, sit down for a big formal meal. You just pop into a baccaro, have a couple cicchetti, a glass of wine, the umbra de vin, and then you move on to the next place. It's like a progressive dinner. Like, again, perfect way to entertain me is progressive dinner.
So you mentioned ombra de vin, which is dialect for ombra di vino, and which means the shade of wine. So
why did this come about?
Yeah, so we learned that it's a small glass of wine, and the tradition comes from merchants who used to stand in the shade, l'ombra of the St. Mark's bell tower, to keep their wine cool while they drank and talked business.
Yes, an umbra is like a quick little pour. It fits perfectly with cicchetti culture. Small bites, small glasses, lots of stops.
And, of course, Venice is all about the seafood.
Totally. Like, you're in the lagoons. So seafood is everywhere. If you want to try a couple of classics, there's the sarde and saur, which is a sweet and sour sardines, and bacala mantecato, and the creamy whipped cod spread. And it sounds kind of strange, but think of it as like, it was like a crostini topped with a fish mousse.
Yeah, so I asked, it looked like mayo in it, but at the restaurant they told me, no, it's not mayo. It's actually whipped seed oil. And then you mix it with the codfish.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. Very tasty.
Yeah. So we ate really well over the weekend, Tanya. And my favorite was the le tagliatelle with the cuttlefish ink. And I think you found the best restaurant in Venice. And people should just hire you for that alone. Seriously.
Thanks, hon. Yeah, no, it was good. And I was so glad we got to experience it. And we can't fail to talk about also a couple of drink classics that originated in Venice. The spritz, if you recall from our bar episode, was invented in Venice. And if you want to also, do another iconic touristy but fun moment, get a Bellini at Harry's Bar. And it's pricey, but again, it's sort of like the Piazza San Marco, where it's just the atmosphere is worth it. And it's a Venice classic, the Bellini. I don't know if you've heard of it, with the peach puree and the Prosecco. So like both drinks actually are based with Prosecco, which is in the nearby region.
Yep.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so Venice food is not just, big dinners, right? It's bites, wine, and, you're just munching your way through the city.
My kind of city, just tour and graze.
Yes. So what if someone has a little more time, Tanya? Are there good day trips from Venice?
There are, but this is where I'm a little careful with my advice because I usually only recommend a day trip if somebody is staying at least 3 nights in Venice. And I usually don't suggest using Venice as a base for multiple day trips. It's better to treat it as its own destination and maybe add one special excursion if you have the time.
Okay, so what are the, most popular options?
Well, one of the big ones is a day trip to the Dolomites, or the Dolomiti, as the Italians say. And, it's a longer day, but the scenery is incredible. Like you get to see the dramatic peaks of the Alps, the alpine villages, and it's a completely different landscape from Venice. And if you do go, though, I definitely recommend an organized tour so you can just relax and enjoy the views and not worry about any of the logistics.
Oh, all right. Mountains after canals. That's quite a contrast.
No, exactly. That's what makes it great. And, another great option is a Prosecco or wine tour into the hills north of Venice. We just talked about Prosecco. It's a beautiful countryside, charming villages, and of course, lots of sparkling wine. And again, I usually suggest a guided experience so it's easy and stress-free.
Are any of those places reachable by train?
Well, again, those two are best by car service.
Okay.
But the two that I do recommend that you can reach by train are Verona.
Okay.
It's an easy day trip. It's a charming historic city famous for Romeo and Juliet, and it has that huge Roman arena right in the center. And, Verona is also a big wine city. It hosts the Vinitaly, one of the largest wine fairs in the world. I think we've mentioned it on our wine episode. And it sits right in the middle of the famous regions like Valpolicella and Soave. And, a fun fact, that's where the closing ceremony for the 2026 Olympics is going to be. And we talked about that in our episode. And, but another popular option just a little bit further west is a town called Sirmione, and it's on Lake Garda. It's a charming lakeside town. It has this large historic castle, picturesque little streets, and it's also known for its thermal spas. So it's a great place to relax for a few hours, take a break from all of the sightseeing. And, being right on the lake, it's perfect for a short boat ride and, or just a leisurely lunch by the lake.
All right. So Venice can be a starting point for a few different experiences.
Yes, but my general advice is enjoy Venice first. And if you have extra time, then add one day trip that really fits your interests. And if you really want to spend more time in that surrounding area, just treat them as separate destinations.
Yeah. All right, Tanya. So before we wrap up, give us your Venice tips. Tips from Tanya.
Okay, I'll try to keep this one simple because a few smart choices can really shape your whole experience in Venice. So, tip number 1, stay at least 2 nights. I think this is really, helps set the stage as a minimum. It gives you time to see the major sites, but also experience the quieter early mornings and evenings when, we talked about the city feels more magical. But, if you want to visit the outer islands or add a cultural experience or take a day trip that we talked about, then 3 nights is a much better pace. And of course, if you're someone who likes to slow down, wander, and enjoy plenty of cicchetti and seafood along the way, you could easily stay longer.
Yeah, of course.
That's with every place, right? Yeah. There's how long do I need to see the basics and how long do I need just to enjoy it, like forever? But let's move on. Tip number 2, choose your timing carefully. Venice is popular year-round. It really is, but timing still makes a difference. Summer is the busiest, the hottest, the most crowded. And, spring and fall, as with much of Italy, is more enjoyable and more comfortable, especially April, May, late September, October. It will still be crowded, but at least less hot. And, also note that Venice has a surprisingly full calendar of events. Like, you wonder why all these crowds have these draws to it. There's Carnevale, there's the Biennale, the film festival, regattas, and it's worth checking what's happening during your days. And sometimes those events are a wonderful bonus, and sometimes you may want to plan around them.
Yeah, if I can throw something in the mix there, I try to ask our guide, there's high water season I mean, there's no really season. High water comes and goes, and it is so hard to predict that. And so it's not like spring or summer or fall. There's high water. So
yeah, there could be flooding really at any time.
Yeah.
So you can't really predict that as part of your planning.
yeah, exactly.
But the last tip, add one special cultural experience. And as we talked about, Venice is a city of atmosphere. So, I think it really adds a lot to the experience to add something cultural. And this could be a small opera performance, a classical concert in a historic palace, a private gondola ride at sunset, or an elegant aperitivo at one of the historic cafes. And, we went to a small opera performance at a palazzo during our weekend.
Yeah.
And, I found out that, I don't know if opera really is my thing.
We saw the Traviata
Yeah.
for our audience that is interested. I mean, it's an opera written by Giuseppe Verdi, and it was great.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. And we were at it was one of those that you, instead of like sitting in a main area and watching a stage, you went from room to room, for each act. And it was unique. I'm glad we did it. And we also stepped into the larger opera house, which is La Fenice. And you could go inside just to see the lobby and the gift shop. And even that was beautiful on the outside structure. So anyway.
Experiencing an opera in there is actually a bucket list item. Sorry.
Yes. And again, if you're in, I would think so. So look into that. I think they're probably harder to get tickets or more in advance, but whatever moment you choose, I think it just really adds something special to Venice to make the trip more memorable.
Yeah, you're right. So Venice is not just about checking off sites. It's about, feeling the place,
Completely agree. And, with the right timing, the right neighborhood, and a few special experiences, it can really feel like a city of wonder.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's time to bring this episode to a close, Tanya. Venice really is one of those places that stays with you.
It really does. It's beautiful, a little mysterious, sometimes crowded, but completely unforgettable. And I'm so glad we made this little trip, both for Carnevale, but both just to remind us what it was about. We hadn't been there together for years. And
yes,
I was there recently with a friend, but I'm so glad we got to revisit it. And I'm glad we could tell you all about it. So thank you all for listening. And if Venice is on your list and you're trying to decide how it fits into a bigger, Italy itinerary, I'd love to help you plan a trip that feels thoughtful, balanced, and truly special.
Thanks for helping us kick off season 3. We are excited for another year, and we hope to have, further grow this year. So make sure you tell your amici about us. Make sure to check out our Facebook group page, Experience Italy with Friends.
And, thank you for spending time with us. Grazie mille. We'll see you in the next episode. Arrivederci. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
We hope you've enjoyed Experience Italy with Friends. If you like the podcast, remember to follow us and leave a review letting us know what you found to be the most helpful. And if you want expert advice or assistance in creating your own immersive and authentic experience in Italy, visit us at www.amicivacations.com.